Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Control Committee, 10th of July 2025. My name is Jerry Pearce, I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. As I've explained to the very packed gallery tonight, we're going to be bringing item 7.4, which is Chaddesden Wood, Lime Lane, to the first item for applications to be considered. So that's part of the housekeeping. Item 1, apologies, I think we've just got Councillor Kerr. Item 2, any late items? No. Item 3, declarations of interest. We have none. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May. Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Item 5, minutes of the meeting of the Conservation Heritage Committee. Councillor Bonser, thank you very much. Appeal decisions. Item 6, Ian, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conscious that Paul Clark has just had a training session about 3 Cortland Gardens, the third item on the list. So I won't mention that. I'll just quickly run through them for you. 145 Walbrook Road was an outline application with some matters also applied for to redevelop a building which has got an MOT testing station at ground level with residential above. Now, we get concerns over noise, ventilation, general disturbance, and we'd refuse the application, and the inspector shared our views on those points. So that was a good one to receive. Second on the list, land rear of 56 Field Rise, Littleover, a small infill scheme to the rear of 56 Field Rise. We'd got issues about the character of the proposal, how it sat in its context, how it related to its neighbours, and the inspector agreed with us over those concerns. The tilted balance under MPPF paragraph 11D limb 2 was obviously engaged, but he didn't feel that overrode the impacts of the development in that particular case. And 19 Scott Street, the final application, number 4, a householder scheme. We'd got concerns about the design relative to neighbouring properties. We'd had a careful assessment of how it sat in that particular part of the street where neighbours were in unusual relationships as they turned the corner, as you can see from that site location plan. So we'd refused the application and the inspector agreed. So three worthwhile decisions, Chair, and we've also had 2 received this week, one at 25 Crown Street, which was very useful, which we'll report next time in September, which talks about communal space in a HMO, which has got parallels with 40 Howe Street, which is on the committee tonight. But a very useful decision there, which we received yesterday. So we're having a good range and a good run on appeal decisions, Chair. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, committee. Good. Fine. Thank you very much. Item 7, applications to be considered. We'll start with item 7.4, which is land north of Chaddesden Wood, Lime Lane, Derby. That's over to you again, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Chair, and good evening to everybody in the gallery. Housekeeping items. First one, the Woodland Trust. We circulated more information following publication of your report. The Woodland Trust confirmed its position in relation to the comments provided and also attached an appeal decision, which in part centred on the impact of a development on an ancient woodland. Now, that is down in Uckfield, and for those who know the area, that's East Sussex, just to the west of Haywards Heath, if you know your way to Brighton. So it was clearly not in the same area. Another case, of course, different characteristics, but the Woodland Trust felt it was a good decision to be mindful of, so we circulated that as well. Secondly, a correction to the report at the top of page 59. The printed text reads, it is possible that a planted buffer zone may limit human activity immediately to the north of the site. It should read, it is possible that a planted buffer zone may limit human activity immediately to the north of Chaddesden Wood. So apologies for that error. On to the main report, Chair. Outline permission is sought, including means of access, for the erection of up to 150 dwellings on this site. All other details are reserved matters. A single vehicular access will be formed onto Lime Lane in a central position within the site. A pedestrian cycle link is also proposed to be formed to provide access to the housing area to the west and pedestrian links to a proposed footway alongside Lime Lane. An illustrative master plan and landscape strategy have been submitted with the application, although these are indicative only and would not form part of the determination of the proposals. These show a suggested layout with 2 green space corridors running from north to south through the site, along the western boundary and through the centre to incorporate some existing trees and hedgerows and the provision of surface water attenuation features in the form of ponds and swales. If you've seen the application documents online, the application is supported by various technical and planning documents which include a green wedge review, arboricultural report, ecological assessment, flood risk and drainage assessments, landscape appraisal and transport assessment. The development site is immediately north of Chaddesden Wood. Chaddesden Wood is recognised by Natural England as an ancient semi-natural woodland and listed on the Ancient Woodland Inventory. Chaddesden Wood is also part of the Chaddesden Lime Woods Local Nature Reserve, and it is a designated local wildlife site. It is one of only 2 ancient semi-natural woodlands in Derby and is the larger of the 2. However, it is still a relatively small woodland extending to some 9.3 hectares. Management of the woodland is undertaken by the City Council with support and assistance from local community groups and dedicated volunteers. The application has been publicised and reconsulted upon, and as included in Part 4 of your report, it has generated a large public reaction. In terms of the planning benefits, these are the socio-economic benefits of providing up to 150 homes with a policy-compliant provision of 30% affordable homes. The Council's affordable housing position has been recently afforded press coverage, and there are some 8,000 people on Derby Home's waiting list. This is a sizable number. The Council also has a 5-year housing land supply of 2.73 years, and as your report states, very significant weight should also be applied in favour of applications that can make a meaningful contribution to increasing this supply. In terms of the decision-making approach for this application, it is worth clarifying this for the avoidance of any doubt. The absence of a 5-year housing land supply means paragraph 11D of the MPPF is engaged by virtue of footnote 8. Paragraph 11D, Lim 1, refers to the application of policies in this framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance, provides a strong reason for refusing the development proposed. In paragraph 11D, Lim 1, the reference to protect has its ordinary meaning to keep safe, defend and guard. The inclusion of irreplaceable habitats in footnote 7 brings into play paragraph 193 of the NPPF. Paragraph 193 states, when determining planning applications, local planning authorities should apply the following principles, and under criterion C it states, development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats, such as ancient woodland and ancient or veteran trees, should be refused unless there are wholly exceptional reasons and a suitable compensation strategy exists. Given the substantive concerns about the impact of the proposed development on the deterioration of the ancient woodland, as set out in your report, I consider that applying the policies of the NPPF here provides a clear reason for refusing the proposed development. This is supported by the Woodland Trust, who confirmed that it maintains its objection to these proposals on the basis of deterioration of ancient woodland and veteran trees. There is no wholly exceptional reason for the development in this location, and as such the application should be refused on the grounds it does not comply with the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 193, criteria C. So, as such, the provisions of paragraph 11D, Lim 1, disengage the tilted balance, which, as you'll be aware, I mention frequently at this meeting when the tilted balance is engaged with housing land supply applications. Therefore, the balance in this case is a straight or flat balance of benefits against harm. The appeal scheme would provide important housing, including affordable units, in the context of local and national need. There would also be benefits to the local economy and to biodiversity, but in my judgment, these benefits would be outweighed by the harm to the ancient woodland, which attracts great weight. Beg your pardon. There is also an adverse impact of the development on the green wedge. And green wedge policy, which remains consistent with the aims of the MPPF, insofar that they contribute to various social and environmental aims as set out in the latest version of December 2024. For example, they enhance the natural and built environment, play a key role in protecting the character of the city, and offer opportunities for leisure and recreation so as to support strong, vibrant and healthy communities. Although this is a policy most important to the determination of the application, which is deemed out of date, it can still be afforded moderate weight. And this policy position, as Councillor Holmes will know, was recently affirmed as part of the Royal Hill Farm decision in May of this year. It is therefore concluded, Chair, that the planning balance falls against the proposal. Accordingly, the proposal would be contrary to the provisions of the development plan taken as a whole. It would not gain support from the MPPF, and therefore there are no material considerations here which indicate that the determination of the application should be other than in accordance with the development plan. The recommendation and reasons for refusal remain, Chair, as printed in your report, and there are speakers to address committee. I would just at this point point out, Chair, we've got Andy Sherville, our tree officer, and we've got Laura Cleal of our traffic and transportation team, and Chris Thorley of Highways Development Control, should you need any further assistance in those areas. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Very comprehensive, that was. Get on to the speakers. Mr. Peck, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Come on. Am I live? Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of Planning Committee. I'm David Peck of Planning Design Group, the agents for this application. It is, of course, disappointing that I must speak against the recommendation before you. Whilst I respect the officer's report, it does not fully reflect the extensive and positive working between the applicant, officers and consultees, nor accurately the conclusions of all evidence. I suggest an alternative planning balance should prevail. The context of any decision on this application is framed by the Council's 2.73-year housing land supply, far below the required 5 years. Significant weight must therefore be placed on the proposed new homes. Green wedge policy is a central consideration. A recent appeal decision confirmed that that policy is out of date and not fully compliant with the MPPF. Only moderate weight can be afforded to that policy. That notwithstanding, this proposal does not simply cast aside the objectives of the green wedge. Rather, the scheme has been designed to allow the essence of functions of the green wedge to be retained and enhanced. The illustrative master plan demonstrates how significant green corridors between Chaddesden Wood and the countryside can be provided. Ecological and visual connections between countryside and the woodland would remain. Substantial recreation space will be provided, achieving the long-standing local plan objective of public access to what is currently entirely private land. Another primary consideration is Chaddesden Wood. The proposed green buffer along the wood's northern edge accords with the Forestry Commission and Natural England's standing advice. The buffer will prevent any direct impacts on trees. Assessments have demonstrated that there will be no loss or deterioration of the ancient woodland and veteran trees subject to mitigation. A mitigation package has been proposed with funding, allowing for new measures and continuation of council-led initiatives within the woodland and around it. Walkers would be directed away from the most sensitive areas. Habitat integrity would be maintained. Simply put, there is no evidenced impact on the wood that should justify the refusal of the application. On that basis, the tilted balance does indeed apply. In conclusion, the development will not result in the loss or deterioration of the woodland. The Council's lack of compliant housing supply invokes the tilted balance. The benefits of new homes, new public recreation space and habitat at an accessible location should be given significant weight. Such benefits decisively outweigh any harm to the green wedge, essential functions of which would in any case be retained and indeed enhanced. The planning balance falls in favour of the proposal. I would therefore welcome your support and ask that the officer's recommendation be set aside and the application approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Thank you very much. Do you want to take any of those before, or do you want to do all the...
I'll do it after.
Do it afterwards,
Yeah.
right. Thanks very much. Beverley Roads, you have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes. Can you just switch your...
Okay. Right. Lime Lane development near Chaddesden Wood. Years ago...
Excuse me, Beverley, could a copy be given to Mr. Peck, please? Is that okay?
Can I have a bit more time then, please?
Yeah.
Thank
We'll
you so much.
We'll restart the clock.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I have already got...
We'll restart. We'll reset the clock. We'll reset the clock. Just give us a few seconds, right? Okay. Away you go.
Sorry, I've got a loud voice. I do apologise. So years ago, my father actually ploughed this land. I am a very local ecologist. And more recently, I worked as Derby City Council ecologist in planning, designating local nature reserves within green wedges to be protected by the local plan. One every year, meeting 78% of Natural England's targets, I am Beverley Roads, a professional ecologist. So you all have a choice to make. Either save the ancient woodland as your legacy for the people of Derby, or support the development and destroy the woodland that we know today. And I can tell you it will happen. There will be no escape. Ancient woodlands have existed from before the 1600s and are Derby's heritage. There are just two, as has been already mentioned. Some of the oldest trees are found across Oakwood itself. The whole area is an important woodland. As habitats of significant importance, ancient woodlands attract species of significant importance in the UK, which is core principle 19. The Baker Consultancy report clearly states the Lime Lane development will directly affect the woodland. That is the developer's consultancy. The Derby Green Wedge policy, which is core principle 18, is upheld by refusing this application to define and enhance the urban structure, as we can see it here, maintain the identity of different neighbourhoods, as we see here, and most importantly, provide an uninterrupted link to countryside for wildlife and biodiversity. Chaddesden Wood L&R uses this green wedge and priority hedgerows to connect with Bredsall SSSI and surrounding countryside as an uninterrupted link in the local nature recovery network, which is now a requirement of the MPPF. And that has just been agreed. The proposed wildlife corridor and gardens will never be enough to allow the existing badgers, skylark, bats, barn owl, all protected and priority species, and nesting birds to be retained and thrive as they do now. Biodiversity net gain funding is available to reinstall the habitats. In my professional opinion, we need to expand Chaddesden Wood both ways to define Oakwood's character, to defend its heritage and enhance its biodiversity status.
That's your 3 minutes.
Not
Ms. Rhodes. Sorry to cut you off, but everybody has 3 minutes and that's it, so yeah. So I am very strict. No problem at all. You were on the roll then, you really were. Next speaker, Mr. Nicholas Charles. Mr. Charles, you have 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Nick Charles, Secretary of the Friends of Chaddesden Wood Community Volunteers, who've cared for this local nature reserve for 15 years. We know this wood. Volunteers join us because they value its rare birds, fungi, bats, badgers, owls and veteran trees and want to protect them for future generations. This is an ancient oak woodland, irreplaceable habitat protected by law and here by Derby's green wedge policy. The National Planning Policy Framework states, development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats such as ancient woodland and ancient veteran trees should be refused unless there are wholly exceptional reasons, which there are not. These two fields, hedgerows and veteran trees, are the last remainders of the Oakwood Green Wedge. Developers destroyed the rest, and now they're back for more. These are linking habitats that connect the wood to the surrounding countryside and are vital to its health and biodiversity. It's already surrounded on three sides by the estate, and if the green wedge is lost, the wood will be an island completely enclosed and isolated, the opposite of what we need to plan for nature recovery networks. The effects of isolation and increased visitor numbers will cause irreparable harm. The applicant's own ecologist states, our ecological appraisal has already identified that there is a potential for an adverse impact on Chaddesden Wood as a result of the proposed development. They admit it will cause harm and they can only offer mitigations with unproven outcomes. Ancient woodland is a fragile ecosystem. It is a small wood in a large suburb, heavily used by people. Our group sees the result of this pressure and no visitor numbers far exceed capacity. We see soil compaction, erosion, path widening, trampling damage, destruction of bluebell glades, unauthorised paths into the centre of the wood, dog issues, noise and light pollution from garden floodlights disturbing bats and owls. When the Lime Court estate was built, the wood became the main pedestrian route into Oakwood. Footfall dramatically increased. This will happen again. More footfall means more damage to the ecosystem. Through experience, we know their proposed mitigation for damage to the wood won't work. We already do these things, and they are not enough. Our management plan identifies the threat to the wood. It states, the most important issue is the connection to a network of habitats in the countryside to the north of the site. Development threatening this remaining link should be resisted. Experts at the Woodland Trust, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and two independent ecologists agree. The wood will be irreparably harmed if these green wedge fields are lost. This is contrary to the NPPF and to Derby's local plan.
That was very good timing, Mr. Charles. That was on the button, that was on the button. Next speaker, Councillor Matthew Eyre. Matt, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and can I associate myself and my two colleagues with everything that Nick and Beverley have said. We agree with them wholeheartedly. Chair and committee members, the data provided as part of this report is vital to the decision you make today, and one crucial component of that is the highways data. I do not think you can be sure of the data provided to you within this report. Appendix E of the Highways Technical Notes of December 24, pages 52 to 63, provide hourly breakdowns of average speeds and number of vehicles using Lime Lane between the 15th and 21st of October last year. Figures are listed for every day and almost every hour during that period, including the 16th and 17th of October. And it's on this basis and on these figures the applicant suggests Lime Lane is safe for this development to proceed. Chair and members, diversion signs were in place at Lime Lane during this time, meaning any figures will be markedly lower than usual. But why were diversion signs in place? Because Lime Lane was closed on the 16th, 17th and 21st of October. It was shut, it was sealed off, there was no access to the public, and I've got confirmation from the Cabinet member to prove that. The data presented and relied upon in this report, those hourly breakdowns, cannot be from Lime Lane during the stated timeframe, and so I do not believe the highways section of the report can be relied upon by this committee. If these figures are claimed to be from Lime Lane, they cannot be. If they are claimed not to be from Lime Lane, I fail to see their relevance. And if this is the case for this document, can you really rely on other documents submitted as part of this application? And it's on that basis I believe you should reject this application. But it isn't just me who thinks you should reject this. 1,490 objections. When was the last time half that many were received? 1,490 submitted by members of the public, the people we as councillors are here to represent. They took the time to object to this proposal based on the impact on woodland, on wildlife, on highways, on ecology, on local services, on infrastructure, on flooding, on life in the Oakwood ward, all certain of the irreparable damage that this application would do. You have cross-party objections from councillors, now Member of Parliament, but look at the organisations objecting too. The Woodland Trust, the Countryside Charity, Friends of Chaddesden Wood, the Parks Officer, Derbyshire County Council, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, the Trees Officer, Bredsall Parish Council, all absolutely certain of the irreparable damage this application would do if it were passed and the fate it would condemn our city's largest ancient woodland to. If 1,490 objections is not enough, nothing will ever be enough, and we risk the faith of our public at large in the planning process in this city. Please do not betray our city's largest ancient woodland, the nature it preserves, and the residents of this city. Please vote down and please reject this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Trewella, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So at a time when we must consider our environmental impact, our impacts on nature, our carbon footprint and building low carbon neighbourhoods, I want to outline to you what we believe life on this development would be like for a single mother should it go ahead. First, what school can the children attend? Not Parkview, the only primary school on the Oakwood estate, as they, like most of Oakwood, are outside of the tiny catchment area. So there's no local school for them. They must travel either into Bredsall Village, assuming that Derbyshire will school them, or to Bredsall Hilltop, which is a 1.3 to 1.5 mile walk each way, which primary age children could not do alone. For secondary school, there isn't one in Oakwood, so travelling to Spondon, Heanor, Chaddesden or further afield is required. Not ideal if you do not drive, and reinforcing car reliance and high carbon neighbourhoods. She and the children cannot easily access a local surgery, as residents will tell you of the difficulties of getting an appointment and the weeks and months of waiting at Lister House. And Park Medical Practice are set to close their Oakwood branch, forcing residents to travel to Borrowash or Chaddesden. Neither are walking distance from this estate, so health concerns go unaddressed. To cycle, we have two options: out onto a 60-mile-per-hour unlit, bendy, tree-laden road, and either to Oakwood's accident hotspot on Lime Lane, or onto A608, where we witnessed a motorcycle fatality not long ago, or through the adjoining estate onto unadopted roads and out onto a busy 40-mile-per-hour road, where a local nursery refuses to use its car park because it doesn't want the parents crossing the road in fear of these fatal accidents. For public transport, they have two choices: into Derby city centre or out into the countryside. To get to the nearest food outlet as the crow flies, the Co-op on Smalley Drive, but this would require 3 buses each way. The Co-op on Scarborough Rise, we estimate, is a 2.4 mile round trip, not a short walk with bags of shopping. We've also just seen the number 26 bus service significantly reduced in frequency by 1/3, with severe knock-ons for passengers. If they want to walk to the community centre, leisure centre, district centre or park, they will do so via an unlit, uneven pathways through the ancient woodland. This will not only increase footfall in and damage the woods, but lone individuals walking dark, secluded pathways presents obvious safety concerns, especially for women and children, especially in winter. We do not believe this site would be low carbon. Public transport is far from abundant and cars would be relied upon to get around. This has been the experience for our existing residents and would be the experience of new residents on this development. The Green Wedge performs its functions. We do not believe a new estate would perform its requirements and believe life would not be pleasant for new residents. And on this basis, we believe you should reject this application.
Mr. Jonathan Davis, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jonathan Davis. I'm the Member of Parliament for Mid Derbyshire, which includes the area that we are discussing tonight. The proposed development is an issue with which I've spoken with many residents about, and I'm aware of the strength of feeling in the local community about it, and it's testament to how many people are here tonight that is the case. When proposals were tabled last summer to build 150 homes on the site, I wrote to Derby City Council and asked that it reject the proposals. I raised concerns that the proposals pose a significant threat to the integrity of the ancient woodland and the rich biodiversity it supports. Since then, I've continued to support the work of the community and the Friends of Chaddesden Wood, who have showed me around the woods and to the proposed development site, and I've been pleased to make many visits myself privately. The potential damage is significant, and please factor that into your thinking tonight. But despite slight changes to the proposal submitted to the Council, my concerns about the project remain, and I continue to urge the Council to reject these plans. I recognise the need for additional housing across the country and in this city, particularly the need for more affordable homes, and it is a shocking indictment of the situation that we are in, that 8,000 people in this city are on housing waiting lists. However, I'm confident that the city's housing needs can be met elsewhere, and I commend the Council for its work done to bring more homes into the city centre. But the threat this proposed development poses to the historic woodland renders it inappropriate, as we heard, in respect of the NPPF. The proposed development undermines the nature of this ancient woodland and the associated environment. It would come at a cost to the next generation, for whom we must be the custodians of irreplaceable sites like Chaddesden Wood. The wood also needs a corridor to the wider countryside to support its biodiversity. Now that a decision is being made, I would once again like to reiterate my position that the Council should reject these proposals. I've worked hard to ensure that the views of residents in Oakwood are represented throughout the planning consideration process, and I remain confident that the rejection of these proposals would represent the best outcome for the community and the wider group of people who use the historic woodland. I want to pay particular tribute to the Friends of Chaddesden Wood, the local councillors and the wider community for the work that they do in the woodland. That has a huge role in community cohesion, as well as preserving the important biodiversity of the site. So please, colleagues on the Planning Committee, please reject this proposal tonight. Thank you.
And last but not least, Councillor Mulhall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This development is contrary to the spirit, the letter and the intent of our local plan, and it threatens to destroy one of the most distinctive, ecologically valuable and beloved green spaces in our city. Policy CP4 states that all proposals for new development will be expected to make a positive contribution towards the character, distinctiveness and identity of our neighbourhoods. What could be more defining and more unique than Chaddesden Wood and the open fields that frame it to the north? It is a dominant landscape feature and a vital source of identity for generations who have lived here. Housing here would not make a positive contribution. It would be prominent, intrusive and destructive. The openness of this landscape must be preserved. To build here would be a betrayal not only of policy but of the community. Second, this proposal flies in the face of policy CP6, which prioritises development on brownfield land. The open fields of the green wedge are not brownfield. They are not disused, degraded or derelict. They are living, breathing green infrastructure used by wildlife, by walkers, and will be used by future generations if we are wise enough to protect it. Third, policy CP16 of green infrastructure makes it clear that development must enhance, not erode, our network of green spaces. These fields are part of a long-standing green wedge, intended as lungs for the city and corridors for nature. Losing them undermines the very principle of joined-up green infrastructure. Fourth, policy CP19 on biodiversity is being degraded. The ecological assessment fails to fully consider the risk and irreplaceable biodiversity of the woodland. Badgers, barn owls, bats, skylarks, all protected, all at risk. To bulldoze ahead without regard for these species is irresponsible and short-sighted. There are deeper concerns still. These green wedge fields are the last remaining water catchment area feeding the aquifers that support the woodland. Chaddesden Wood is already drying out. To remove this final sponge from the landscape, the drying will accelerate, and with that comes ecological collapse. And finally, let us not forget what construction means. Fencing off the green wedge for years will sever all wildlife connectivity. It will choke off habitat, skylarks will lose nesting grounds, barn owls will vanish, bats and badgers will be disorientated and displaced. Chair, we are custodians, not just of policy, but of place. This development is not sustainable. It is not acceptable. Do not turn Oakwood into Deadwood. Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers. Ian's been scribbling away like mad. I think he needs a new pen. Do you want to come back on any of those points, Ian, before we go to the committee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just firstly to what Mr Peck said, yes, it's correct, CP18 is out of date. It's one of the most important policies relevant to the determination of the application. This was an issue as part of the Royal Hill Farm debate, but it still chimes with the framework in terms of its ability. There's I quoted part of that, part of the words of Mr the Inspector for the Royal Hill Farm appeal that they enhance the natural and built environment, play a key role in protecting the character of the city and offer opportunities for leisure and recreation so as to support strong, vibrant and healthy communities. So whilst policy is out of date, it can still be afforded moderate weight in the decision-making process together with the other policies that are relevant to this application. We've had, he mentions, of course, that the housing land supply position is at 2.73 years. That is correct. It's a significant shortfall. However, we disagree on the point about the engagement of the tilted balance. We feel that with the policies that and the landscape, the habitat that is at play here, that paragraph 11D, limb 1 is engaged, and so we have to be very mindful of the impact and deterioration of the ancient woodland. And of course, of the speakers have pointed out, Chair, various groups, including the Woodland Trust, who aren't a statutory consultee in this case, only on major infrastructure projects. They are very clear in their opinion on that point. Other groups, of course, have said the same thing. What I would do also, Mr Peck raised an issue about the functionality of the green wedge, and I'll just talk about it very, very briefly. That's the green wedge as it stands presently. The area in the top northwestern corner is the land that was formerly green wedge, which was released for housing some 9 years ago, and we now have 250 plus homes on that site. That, at that time, the green wedge spanned an area of 40 hectares. It now spans 31 hectares, and as you can see, the functionality of the green wedge is to pull in green space from open countryside. So, as you know, Chair, there are 13 green wedges in the city, and they've all got different character and components, but that's an essential part of it, that the functionality is bringing the open countryside into the urban fabric, and as you can see, that's precisely what it does. Now, the application site totals 8.3 hectares, so as you can see, if it was to be given over to development, I mean, not all of that 8.3 hectares is given over to built development, but at dwellings per hectare of about 30 to 35, there's going to be quite a large percentage devoted to it. What you would have effectively have is the mouth of the wedge being severely eroded. And as part of a recent review, albeit in draft status, we've had consultants tell us that whilst it does not specifically separate distinct neighbourhoods, it plays an important role in breaking up a large continuous area of homogeneous late 20th century housing estate. It also goes on to say that this green wedge is making a wholly positive contribution to urban structure, scoring highly in terms of the green wedge's primary function, which is that function to bring green space into the city. It would effectively close off the mouth of the green wedge, albeit there is on the illustrative master plan on the western edge there would be a margin of green space if that master plan was to be followed, extending from about 200 metres across in the northern section where there's the balancing pond on the adjacent site, through to about 100 metres across midway through the that margin, that buffer zone, down to about 80 metres across at the bottom of that. But as you can see, it does effectively close off the mouth of the wedge. And as you know, Chair, sorry, I'll just go back to the area I quoted. It was originally 40 hectares, reduced to 31 hectares as part of the last local plan review and rolling back of green wedge boundaries. Just for context, when we were sat in this room talking about the Acorn Way green wedge, that covers an area of some 55 hectares, different green wedge position, and the development site was part of that green wedge, and a very careful topographical assessment as to where that development site sat within that particular green wedge. And the inspector was very careful to point out all the features of that green wedge, that it would still function and exist as a green wedge, even with that development in play. And of course, that development was in play in line with the tilted balance because paragraph 11D Lim 1 policies weren't part of that scheme, Chair. Something else I'll just refer to, and I did mention earlier that it is a different scheme in a different area, but part of the appeal decision that was circulated by the Woodlands Trust does include some rather interesting text that I think you just need to be mindful of. As I say, this case needs to be determined on its merits, but this text is rather interesting. It's paragraph 40, you may have read it. I'll just read it out for you. It says, the framework is clear that where deterioration of irreplaceable habitat has been identified, there must be wholly exceptional reasons to approve the development. I have considered whether the provision of housing, where there is an absence of a 5-year housing supply and a severe shortage of affordable homes, constitutes an exceptional reason. Even if I were to adopt the land supply figure put to me by the applicant, now in this case, it was between something like 3.3 and 3.9 years. We are less than that, of course. I have concluded that it does not. Whilst the examples given of such circumstances in footnote 67, as it was, to the framework is not a closed list, they nonetheless indicate that exceptional reasons are likely to be where the development needs to be in a specific or limited location, such as essential infrastructure. Housing, whilst badly needed, is less restricted in where it can be located, and I have no evidence before me that it cannot be located elsewhere in the district. I therefore do not consider the need for housing in the circumstances of the case before me to constitute an exceptional reason. So that's just for clarity on that point, Chair. Now, of course, we are moving through a local plan process. We are looking at the 13 green wedge sites. There will be difficult choices to make in the future. But we feel that in the context of this particular green wedge, the way that it sits to the north of Oakwood, a relatively small green wedge with a pinch point in the middle at Springwood Drive, and the fact that it offers the corridors and the connection from Chaddesden Wood to the green space to the north, this is a very sensitive piece of green wedge, and consultants have agreed on that point with the comments that they have made thus far. So I thought that was worth pointing out, Chair, and I hope that that was useful. As I say, this is a different case in a different part of the country, but there are elements of the inspector's text that I thought you needed to be mindful of. I will move on, Chair. Bear with me. Issues related to the Section 106 package on pages 82 and 83 of your report, and we negotiated those components, and we are satisfied that they are acceptable in this case. There were talks about linkages, sustainable active travel connections through the site. Now, I might ask Laura to come in on this point because there have been detailed discussions on these points, in particular reference to footway connections through the eastern part of the site where the link to Lime Lane is now proposed in the northeastern corner. We've been looking at land on the eastern boundary. So that is something worth, I think, a comment from Laura Cleal on that point. And also in terms of the suggestions about the TA analysis and the the assessments taken in October, on the 16th, 17th and 21st of October. I can't comment on that point, Chair, I don't know, so I will defer to Laura also. I don't think I've got much else to add thus far, Chair, but I will pass over to Laura, and then if anybody needs anything else following the debate, I'm still here. Lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Laura, you want to come back on those? Thank you.
All good? Great. With regards to the comments made regarding the speed data on Lime Lane, we weren't aware about personally that there was the closure on. However, that said, we do have data from a number of years ago on there, which actually records lower 85th percentile speeds. That said, we are satisfied that this access can be put into place with adequate visibility based on the measured speeds on that road. We are also seeking a contribution towards a TRO to lower the speed limit on Lime Lane as a part of it, which is a reasonable request in this instance. With regards to the linkages, we have worked tirelessly on this application. It must be made clear that this isn't the first time that this application in this nature has been brought. It was nearly very called to a committee about, is it September 23? And it was withdrawn at very late notice. The applicant has done, as far as we are concerned, has gone and really sorted out the highways issues on this one. We've secured a footway cycleway that negates the oak trees on the frontage, which lakes down. We have got a letter of intent onto the Persimmons land, which is crucial and allows people to walk through onto there. With regards to the land to the east, it's unusual. It's a legacy, basically, of when the Oakwood estate was built. And effectively, we can't secure anything because the applicant doesn't own the land. So as far as we're concerned, they have done everything what they can do to deliver the links. They are, with regards to proximity of services and things, we are in a position whereby, as I'm sure everyone realises, there are breakages in that hedgerow and trees on that eastern link. They are there. You could walk through there today. No one's going to stop you. I just can't get an improvement for it. But we're satisfied that people can walk through. It's also made clear in the report regarding section 106, we are going to be getting a transport contribution, which is there for sustainable transport improvements. So as a highways authority are concerned, we do not feel that we would be able to sustain this at an appeal. And that is why we remain convinced that the applicant has done all they can do from a highways point of view, and that we have not put an objection on this from a highways point of view.
Thanks, Laura. Quiet, please, in the public gallery, please. Committee, over to yourselves. Councillor Pattison.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the highways point around the Lime Lane survey. So are the highways team saying that we don't know if the survey is accurate anymore, but we'll just base it off some data taken from years ago? Just some clarity on that point.
This is the first point this evening that I've been made aware that the road was closed when the survey was undertaken. That's news to me, okay? So I've gone back on the information that is before me, which we are undertaken, and I am satisfied that the speeds they recorded back before then they're okay. Please be reminded that access is being delivered on the basis they can achieve the necessary 120-mile-an-hour visibility display onto Lime Lane. We are satisfied they can get it on the measured speed, and that it will be endorsed. It will be supported by a traffic regulation order.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. Councillor Bonser.
Yes, transport, thanks Chair. Transport matters aside, and also very mindful of the city's need for housing and indeed affordable housing. Taking all that into consideration, this is irreplaceable habitat. unique and irreplaceable are the words that are being used. And whilst the developer talks about compensatory measures, I think Derby deserves better than compensation. We need to retain those habitats. This is, a very important environment for the people locally and for the city as a whole, in my view. That, in addition to the impact on the green wedge and also the impact on local public health and access to amenities, which I think is crucially important for the city's health, draws me to a conclusion that I would support the officer's recommendation to refuse this application.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. I may be bruised and I may have lost on points what felt like a 12-round slugging match in regard to the Royal Hill Road appeal, but I fully support officers' stance on this application. There needs to be, and I fully believe there needs to be, a very high bar in regards to proposals to develop our precious green wedge. I'm satisfied that officers' conclusions are both reasonable on balance and sound on conclusion in this case. I will be supporting the officer's recommendations to refuse, and should the applicant appeal, I very much look forward to the council defending the principle of justified protection of our green wedge from inappropriate housing developments. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Matt. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. As the Planning Committee, we have to weigh up various competing considerations, and that's our job. That's what we do when we look at every application. And one of those has very clearly been said is the need for new housing. And that's an important factor that we have to rightly weigh up in this decision. There's the issue of the housing land supply has been raised. When we look at recent times, Derby's actually done extremely well in terms of meeting our national targets. The last figures that I've seen, 2023-24, there were actually 1,345 dwelling completions. When for previous years the number's been around 500 or 600, something like that. So to me that's evidence that we are meeting the housing needs in conjunction with our neighbouring authorities. We've also got a new local plan going through the process at the moment, and additional sites will be allocated as part of that process when that goes out to consultation and a decision by full council later this year or early next year. So in weighing up that duty that we have to provide adequate housing, to me we are very much on track, and the provision is there to be able to meet that in future, albeit that at present we technically don't meet this 5-year supply. What is important as well to weigh up is the impact on the environment, and this is a really very unique and special natural habitat at Chaddesden Wood, and that gives us cause to weigh that up as well in the balance. When we're looking at the green wedge, the proposals, to my mind, not only diminish it, but actually destroy the functionality of the green wedge by taking away that access between the open countryside into the wooded area, which is so important for sustaining Chaddesden Wood, an ancient woodland which rightly has protection. So weighing everything up, Chair, I'm also of the mind that this application should be refused for those reasons.
Thanks, Martin. Any other comments? Kieran.
Thanks, Chair. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening and sharing their comments and their experiences. Chair, we've heard from locals, experts, volunteers, community groups, councillors, members of Parliament, and they're all aligned in their opinion. We have to remember that we have a duty to listen to their voices, which I have done. With over 1,400 objections, clear evidence of harm, discrepancies in reports, apparently, eradication, not erosion, of this section of Green Wedge, and examples of detrimental impact to local infrastructure, which I accept could well result in harm to an irreplaceable ancient wood. The case against this application is compelling. Now, I've listened to the expert appointed by the applicant, and while some of his points are valid, including the crucial need for housing, his comments didn't come close to satisfying all of my concerns. So on balance, and in support of officers' recommendations that this plan is contrary to CP16 and CP19, I don't see how this can be supported.
That's Kieran.
Move the recommendation, Chair.
You're moving the recommendation. So the recommendation is to, you're seconding it, Kieran, thank you. The recommendation is to refuse the planning application. So all those in favour of refusal? It's unanimous. 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 Thank you very much, everybody. Can I just thank all of the speakers tonight? You've all spoke extremely well. Thank you for the public gallery for, yeah, okay, you weren't too bad tonight. Would you, if you would kindly leave the public gallery now, if that's okay, so we can carry on with the committee meeting. But thank you very much for attending. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves and hopefully not see you again. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the short delay. That's for the YouTube viewers. Thanks, everybody in the public gallery as well. For turning up. We move now on to item 7.1, Car Park, Middleton Avenue, Derby. That's Jenny with the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application is for the erection of a 2- and 3-storey building comprised of 1 4-bedroom, 6-occupant, 1 5-bedroom, 6-occupant, and 1 8-bedroom, 11-occupant flats in multiple occupation. The description of the proposal has changed through the life of the application due to the rearrangement of the internal configuration with the increase of occupants from 21 to 23. The layout is for a linear building filling most of the width of the plot. This block has the majority of its frontage onto Middleton Avenue with a small frontage onto Burton Road. There's a clear existing building line along Burton Road where the existing dwellings numbers 590 to 598 gently step forward to follow the profile of the road with front gardens. Furthermore, the existing dwellings are set back from Burton Road. This latest proposal is submitted further to refusal of a previous scheme upon the site in 2022, which had included the erection of a predominantly 3-storey building comprised of 5 retail units and 8 apartments. Elevational drawings of this scheme are visible on the screen. This previous scheme had been refused on the grounds of its poor design and form in terms of massing, architectural details, layout and excessive height and scale. It was also refused by reason of its height and massing in close proximity to the site boundary, which would have had a significantly detrimental overshadowing and overbearing effect, an overall intrusive appearance upon the neighbouring dwelling at 590 Burton Road. The scheme was also refused on highway grounds in regards to parking and access provision, whereby insufficient information had been provided. This latest proposal has been amended in terms of the external appearance and internal layout, with reductions in height, length and width from the scheme previously refused. This latest scheme indicates a height reduction of 1.3 metres a length reduction of 3.5 metres and a width reduction of 1.1 metre from the previously refused unit. The retail element has now been removed and therefore the proposal would be solely residential. This development is proposed as a car-free scheme with cycle parking located to the north along the boundary with neighbouring 1 Middleton Avenue, and bin storage is located adjacent to the cycle storage area. This application has received 171 objections and 62 letters of support, suggesting mixed views to the development. The issues raised by objectors have in part been addressed through amendments to the scheme. This is an application for residential units in a predominantly residential area. Impacts upon neighbouring 590 Burton Road to the rear have been outweighed by the requirement for residential properties in this case. While some objectors would prefer a less intensive development upon the site, the local planning authority must determine the proposals contained in the application. It's noted that a substantial number of letters of support have also been received, which generally welcome the provision of much needed addition to the housing stock of the city in line with the tilted balance. Consultation responses from the City Council's housing team, highways team, waste management team and urban design officer raised no objections to the proposal as amended, subject to appropriate conditions. Further to the presentation of the application to the Chair and Vice Chair of Planning Committee, Councillor Kerr has provided a written statement with concerns relating to the level of space allocated to bin storage and possible reductions to cycle parking if the bin storage were to be increased as per the suggested bin storage condition. Councillor Kerr also raised concerns relating to the blank facade which will be visible upon approach to the building from the west. These concerns have been relayed to the applicant's agent, who has provided revised plans. These revisions include the enlargement of the proposed bin storage area alongside the existing cycle storage. However, these details are still to be conditioned to ensure appropriate facilities are provided. Revised plans also show the relocation of the first floor obscurely glazed window further forward towards Burton Road, therefore breaking up this blank elevation. Overall, it's considered that the proposal as amended is acceptable by way of its size, form, character and design, and residential amenity would not be unreasonably affected. For these reasons, the proposal is considered acceptable with regards to the relevant local plan policies in relation to design and amenity, as well as the overarching guidance in the National Planning Policy Framework. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to suggested conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jenny. We have 3 speakers on this one. Mr. Nick Bush, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Middleton Avenue residents. So why are we so concerned about this proposal? To be clear, the amendments to this proposal have done nothing to address any of our original concerns. The whole scheme is still far too high, too big and too dense. The top floor has actually been made bigger. 17 flats are still all showing double beds. That's potentially 34 residents. There are only 48 properties on the whole of Middleton Avenue. The footprint still covers over 85% of the whole site. Indoor amenity space has been reduced even further, and there's very little by way of outdoor recreational space or soft landscaping. It has little regard for the quality of living and well-being of any future residents. Middleton Avenue and Burton Road are entirely 2-storey residential streets with established building lines. The proposal still comes forward of the established building line on Burton Road. 3 storeys would still have a massive impact on neighbouring properties. On Middleton Avenue, the building proposal comes right up to the beginning of the footpath, totally at odds with all the houses in the rest of the street which have front gardens and drives. Your own officers have voiced concerns about inadequate provision for bins and cycle storage. We have concerns about the lack of fire escape measures for the 1st and 2nd floors. Will these have to be a later addition? Parking issues at the end of Middleton Avenue are particularly acute. There is simply no extra capacity for street parking anywhere in the surrounding area. A condition has been suggested where permits are not given to the residents of the proposed development. This would be difficult to police and enforce. Also, as permits are not needed in the evenings or weekends, so parking by residents, visitors, friends, etc. could become extremely problematic. Whilst the number of the objections to this proposal far outnumber the supporters, the key point is it is the local community that will be impacted by the development that have objected to it. We are in complete agreement with people from outside the area who cite the needs for affordable housing, and we too are keen to see a residential development on this plot. We would welcome a more modest development which is more in tune with the health and well-being of both present and future residents. One which is sustainable and one which the present local infrastructure can support. We appreciate the need to hit housing targets, but this one is just too excessive. You are elected to look after Derby's and our interests and well-being. You rejected the previous application, and this scheme is really no different. The proposal benefits only the applicant. You must refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Bush. Colin Pickering, you have 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Colin, and I live on Middleton Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The email Richard Williams sent you explains we're not NIMBYs, we're simply frightened by the sheer scale of this proposal. I'd like to look at the previous application you rejected, which had shops, flats above, and ask you whether anything has really changed. You rejected the scheme because, quote, it is of poor design in terms of massing, architectural details, layout, height and scale, severely detrimental, out of keeping with the character of the street. End quote. That's not changed. Quote, it would have an intrusive effect on the neighbouring dwelling, 590 Burton Road. End quote. The new proposal still has 3 stories, well in front of the established building line. Quote, it inadequately addressed highways matters, detrimental implications for the highways network, parking, access, safety, end quote. That hasn't changed. Indeed, we have parents parking on Middleton Avenue to take their children to school on Thornhill Road, which causes massive build-ups and road safety issues at key times of the day. We've monitored this daily. An average of 28 to 41 vehicles are dangerously parked, i.e. parking on the double yellow lines, obstructing drives and engines left running. The applicant claims he has amended the scheme, but really he's only tinkered. He has rebranded most of the flats as single occupancy, but each still has a double bed. The proposal contravenes your own local plan policy. The site is outside the defined local centre envelope, and Middleton Avenue is the boundary. If you approve this at 3 stories, then you're opening the way for similar schemes on any sites on Middleton Avenue and neighbouring streets, and you have no chance should the applicants go to appeal. We believe your officers have been bullied by the applicant to bring the committee under threat of non-determination of ongoing duty to appeal. You have over 170 plus objections, including every property on Middleton Avenue, and 60 letters of support, mainly from friends and associations of the applicant. Communal space in this application is smaller than the original, however, both inadequate and will have a big impact on the quality and the environment and the mental health of the occupiers. Please refer to the rejected HMO proposal, House Street, paragraph 8.2, on your next agenda. Every development needs to make a profit, but this is pure greed. It is not the development gets permission and goes ahead. It will have an appalling impact on the quality of life and people in the area. We implore you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pickering. Councillor Lonsdale, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Let me be clear, the residents are not opposed to development on this site. They want this site to be developed. It is a eyesore as it is, but this development that is proposed is not fit for purpose. It is not in keeping with what is right for this area. a family home, which is the current proposed, the current planning permission that is available on this site, would be welcomed by my residents of Littleover. I've worked closely with my residents, and I can say that they are deeply concerned about the conditions that the people who will be living in this HMO will be living in because of the small living space and the amenities within there, and the amenities that will be available to these new residents of Littleover that will be available to them within the wider community. They say that it's going to be a car-free thing. How are they going to enforce that? How are they going to make sure that there is no extra pressure on the busy Burton Road junction with Middleton Avenue and more pressure on the parking, which is at a premium on Middleton Avenue? I believe that this is not in line with Derby Local Plan, which promotes high-quality places that support well-being and strong communities. But how would this HMO support the local community in that way with such a large number of people squished into one place? I also believe that that this is not in line with the spirit of CP6, I think it is, which speaks of HMOs and not wanting excessive HMOs in an area. Yes, there are not many HMOs in that part of Littleover. However, it undermines that and opens the door to more HMOs being in that area. So we are very strongly concerned over that, and we do not want this area of any part of Derby to become a place where there are lots and lots of HMOs. We're concerned about the safety of residents when it comes to the highways as well. That extra pressure on children going to school, on all those things are it's an unnecessary risk that we don't need to take. I would ask you, from the bottom of my heart, please reject this proposal.
Chris, Highways.
Thank you, Chair. We've been here before with these sort of applications. I can only ask for refusal if we have a clear safety issue or if there is, according to the NPPF, severe impact, and that does not really include parking. Parking is, it falls outside of those things. That's all I can say, really, because we're just in the same position that we've been in many a time.
Thanks, Chris. Committee, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I live nearby this site and I pass it several times a day, and it does need developing. I think everyone would agree with that. But as a committee, we have to be mindful of our local issues and the local plan. My concerns are its over-intensification of this site. They are... The standards of living space in the building at the moment is tight. Whilst I think it does meet the criteria, it is just too tight in my view. We want people to have a proper living space and have a quality of life. So I think that needs to be looked at. The height, actually, when we saw the plan on the screen a few moments ago, I think it's quite attractive and in keeping, if you think of the other corner where we've got the new or relatively new Middleton Lodge, I think it's quite a nice opening to the Littleover village. But we have to think that whatever we grant in that position will be there for many, many years. And I think we need to be mindful of the neighbour at 590 Burton Road, who obviously live there, and they will be looking at whatever is built there. So we need to look at it from that aspect as well. The other issue is regard the outdoor area. I take on board the cycle parking and the place for wheelie bins, but there's no outdoor area other than that for laundry, drying, etc. Then there's no gardens as such. So I really think we ought to look at the quality of life for the potential people and families who are going to be living in the property. The other issue, and I take on board what the highways officer has just said, is regarding car parking. I drive through Little Over Village sometimes 4-6 times a day, and at school times, you know, you've got to get your times right to get down Thornhill Road. So I really think we need to, and I think as Councillor Lonsdale says, how are you going to enforce if we make it a car-free zone? I mean, I take on board the cycle racks that are going to be incorporated in the scheme. But I think there are just little tweaks. I'm in favour of development. I'm in favour we need more affordable homes where people can have a certain quality of life. But I would like to move deferral on this matter so that we can reduce, in my view, reduce the bedrooms and give the people who potentially will live in this development a better quality of life. Thank you.
We've got Councillor Bolton has put forward that as a deferral. Councillor Now and Councillor Bonser. Do you want to speak, Sue, or do you just want to about the deferral?
I would second the deferral, but I did just want to make one other point in connection with the impact on parking, what have you, in the street. Usually, and I accept that it's being put forward as a car-free development. It's just if we're going to defer this and take it back to the developer potentially, you know, we've got to live in the real world, and usually when we're presented with HMOs, we're asked to consider parking at 0.3 per person. Well, if there's a body in every bed on that plan, you know, you're potentially going to have perhaps 30 plus people. Well, a third of that, you know, is a lot of extra cars. And there is a safety issue, in my view, here because of the impact of the school safe haven across the way. You know, I'm very familiar with the site, and you know, the impact of how a school safe haven just really moves the people that come in cars outside of that area. And I know that people park over there for the school. So, so that, you know, there is a potential safety issue here in my view, because we're going to add extra cars to that end of the road. So yes, I agree. They need to think again. It isn't good enough. It's, you know, it's the amenity, the outside amenity there is virtually non-existent. So I would like all those points to be taken into consideration if we are able to defer this application, Chair. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. If it helps, this application has been in a long time and we have pushed, I believe, the agent developer as far as we can. I think deferral will end up back here in September with the same scheme before you. We can reasonably ask for deferral, but you may be, if it helps, want to go to a decision given our experience with the developer, and they wanted a decision tonight, if that helps members.
Thanks, Paul.
We have to go to the vote first.
Can you just keep quiet, please? We're just having the committee. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Now, it seems clear to me that there's general support for a development here, and there's a valid aspiration for something positive to be well, something positive for the community, not focused on maximum occupancy. I do support deferral. I think that would be something that would send a strong message from committee to the applicant, and it would give them a final chance potentially to consider further discussion with officers and reflect on the view that what the development could be. something that would be welcome, something that would be more modest, a proposal that respects the village and delivers housing of a high standard. Now, you know, let's see, because the other option that we have, of course, is to disagree with officers and refuse the application. But I think, you know, there is that option, but I think we have the power to do what we wish, and if Councillor Bolton has put forward deferral, I think I will support that, give the applicant and or the agent, whichever it is, one last chance to actually come up with a scheme which is more in keeping and would have a positive outcome to the village. And we'll see where that goes. Despite what Paul Clark has said, I think it's only right that we should give him one last chance to get it right. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Ian.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if the agent went into a state of high dudgeon, they could appeal non-determination, of course. So that's open to them. But clearly, you've you know, Councillor Bolton's forwarded the deferral suggestion. So I think it's a vote on it, is it, Stephen?
You've had it seconded.
It's seconded. Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Bolton, Councillor Nawaz seconded, Councillor Bonser thirded. So all those in favour of deferral, take it back to the applicant.
All bar two.
No, that's 9
in favour, Chair.
Any against?
No.
And no against. That's it. So that application is deferred. So thank you very much. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, everybody in the public gallery. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We move now to item 7.2. You're not allowed to... Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. We'll now move to item 7.2, which is 40 Howe Street, and that is Emma.
Thank you, Chair.
Please, thank you.
This application is for a change of use from a 2-bedroom residential dwelling to a 6-bedroom house in multiple occupation, along with a single-storey rear extension and the installation of a rear dormer. The proposal consists of 2 bedrooms on each floor and 2 communal kitchen areas on ground and first floor. A total of 57 objections have been received. The main concerns are parking, waste collection and noise pollution. In policy terms, there is no in-principle concern with the proposed change of use to a different form of residential use. The area is covered by an Article 4 direction for HMOs. The principle of the change of use is considered to be acceptable in this residential setting. A 6-person HMO would not be significantly different in activity or number of residents than what might be expected at a similar terrace dwelling, and therefore it is not considered that the impact on the residential amenity would be significantly harmful. There is on-street parking availability on nearby streets. The highways officer considers that there is no material harm to highway safety and raised no objections. The proposal does not meet the council's housing standards for room sizes. The front second floor bedroom would not have adequate usable floor space, and because it is in a dormer, would be further reduced by the roof slope. The proposed corridor area in this room cannot be counted as part of the usable floor space. The proposed dormer is also not shown accurately on the submitted plans. The proposal would harm the living conditions of future residents of the property by reason of poor outlook and inadequate living space, which would significantly outweigh the modest benefits from delivering a single HMO with regard to the provision of internal living space. This would be in conflict with policies GD5 and H13 of the City of Derby Local Plan Review, which, amongst other matters, expects developments to be well designed and create a high-quality living environment for existing and future users. On balance, the proposed change of use and associated extensions are considered unacceptable on amenity grounds, and the application is recommended to be refused. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. We have 3 speakers. Sally Bareham. You have 3 minutes, Sally. Mics aren't working.
No, mine's not.
Oh, yeah.
This one's working. Yeah. There you are.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sally. I live 12 doors from the proposed 6-bed HMO at 40 Howe Street. The residents learned of it from a leaflet posted by a concerned neighbour, and there was a link to the council's page, but many found it difficult to access and navigate successfully to lodge their complaints. Therefore, after contacting the Derby Telegraph and getting signatures on a petition, I'm here to ask you to refuse this application made 10 days after the implementation of Article 4 on the 3rd of May. Our overpopulated area is cramped with wheelie bins and excessive parking up curbs on narrow streets. Access for our bin men or emergency vehicles is difficult, and on the pavements, wheelchairs and pushchairs struggle to pass. The refurbishment of a 2-bed to a 6-bed property will bring skips and builders' vans to an area with no space left. Following that, 6 more residents and possibly 6 more cars. The site is only 1 door from our busy corner shop. Their customers' parking and daily delivery vans are also vying for space. There are 75 houses on Howe Street. 14 of those are HMOs with 2, 3 or 4 occupants and their vehicles, but with parking space for only 1 each. Howe Street is on the pilot scheme to get bins off streets, but a 6-bed HMO will require the larger bins that won't fit through the alleyways between the houses, and if they leave bins out, others will too. We have a massive problem in the area with overflowing bins and very regular fly tips from end-of-tenancy clear-outs. We're invaded with flies and rats every single summer. The PPO team are so underfunded that they don't respond to complaints for over a week, leaving dumped furniture, mattresses and bags of rubbish stinking on our streets. We have 86 private landlords in the area, mainly short-term lets, vacating regularly, leaving messes like I've shown in my pictures. Unless you live here, you can't imagine how depressed we are watching more family homes being sold cheaply to landlords because the area is so filthy and neglected. We have a much higher level of rented and social housing than the national average of 19.5%. We've got a staggering 61.4%. This HMO will extend into the garden, blocking natural light from both neighbours and intrude on the privacy of 2 adjoining streets. These terraced properties are side by side and back to back. Please help in our efforts within the community by refusing such a large HMO and consider these issues in all future planning within the Morley and New Zealand area. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Councillor Pandey, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. So this, I started getting objections for 40 House Street. I got contacted by many residents, and then I requested the Planning Development Control to bring this to Planning Committee. Morley and New Zealand area suffers heavily with the large number of HMOs, and that is one of the reasons that we advocated for Article 4 to be brought into the area. This application, the housing says that it has considered the Article 4 changes into this application. But I found out, and today housing told me that there are 9 HMOs on House Street already. And a resident from the same street has given me figures that she's saying that there are 14 HMOs on House Street. And if you look at the map, there is also Lloyd Street, which is just next to it, goes off the House Street. And there is Stable Street as well, which also got HMOs. The whole area has got higher concentration of HMOs. Now, we have seen what kind of problems we get from HMOs, and I have highlighted that in my objection. We get things like parking, inadequate parking, And obviously, highways have done their survey, and they said that there's only 0.3 vehicles per house. But that doesn't seem to be the issue. I think the survey, when it was done, the street wasn't full of cars, but if you come in the evening time, then you can see how bad the parking situation is. We cannot bring the permits at this place at the moment, and even if you approve this with any conditions, that's not going to help, because we have seen any added conditions are very difficult to be enforced by the council because we don't have enough number of enforcement officers. It also, if we look at the housing comments on the application, it talks about the lack of lighting on the first floor rear bedroom. So that also adds on to the quality of housing which we are talking about here. The whole application, in my opinion, is just another example of how a developer is trying to maximize the profit using the area. And there is lack of consideration of the impact of these HMOs onto the community. So like the previous application, we want to see the development of properties, but not to the extent that it is non-productive for the existing community. We are having impact on the noise, nuisance. When I say nuisance, we are already facing a huge task with the bins on street, fly tipping, dumping on the street. And we get another HMO approved in the area, that is only going to compound the problems. So my recommendation to the committee, or my request to the committee, is that please, although this has been recommended to be refused, please reject this application, because this is not what the community is looking to get in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandey. Councillor Noah.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ndukwe Onoha. I'm one of the councillors for Markworth in New Zealand, and also serve as the city's cabinet member for Street Pride, Public Safety and Leisure. I'm here this evening to add my voice and the voices of many residents who I've spoken to in urging you to refuse the application to convert 40 House Street into a house in multiple occupation. And to be clear, this is not a one-off issue. It's part of a broader worrying trend that we've seen in the area where there's an oversaturation of HMOs, often driven by developers who have little connection to the area and less concern for the long-term consequences of their projects. In my role overseeing street pride and public safety, I regularly deal with the knock-on effects of these conversations. There's rubbish piling on pavement, as people have said, bins left out permanently, fly tipping has become a feature that we are having to deal with constantly, especially when the temporary residents are leaving the rented accommodations. There's increased complaints about noise, disruption, and antisocial behavior, and there's parking pressure, a lot of parking pressure. Now, here highways say there was no significant highway risk. I beg to disagree, and I would really urge officers to please visit some of these areas when these applications are being considered, because then you would see that there is in that zone or in that area a significant risk to residents, to people on mobility with mobility needs going down pavement. But this isn't just, I'm not just objecting on amenity grounds. The community has become a free-for-all for HMOs. And I would definitely ask that we please conduct more investigations to find out the real numbers of the HMOs that are prevalent, and they are far more than what's official. There are more HMOs now coming up in the area. Now, we brought Article 4 into Derby for good reason. The balance has already tipped too far, and our residents are feeling it. I've spoken to homeowners who have lived in this place for decades, people who bought their homes with the dream of a safe, settled area, and are now finding themselves surrounded by poorly managed, high-turnover properties. And we're not just dealing with planning applications, we're dealing with a pattern where developers build or convert first, then apply for permission after the fact. That undermines the trust in the process and sends the wrong message to residents who do play by the rules. We do need priority family housing. Homes are built for stable communities, not just short-term, high-occupancy conversions. I would ask the committee to please consider and align themselves with the recommendation by officers, but also the...
3 minutes, Ndukwe.
Thank you, Chair. But please, I'll consider the voices of the residents who overwhelmingly are against any more HMOs, not just this, any more HMOs
3 minutes.
in our community. Thank you, Chair.
Cheers, thanks for that. I think this is a straightforward one, personally. Committee, move refusal. All those in favour of the recommendation of the officers for refusal? That's unanimous.
Chair.
Yes, Ian, sorry.
Sorry, there was just one point. I mean, clearly the elected members had talked about concentration of HMOs as well. I don't know if it was any part of, you moved straight to vote. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that or if that was something that you're not concerned about, well, not unduly concerned about.
Well, obviously I've read the report, I've listened to the councillors and the speaker. Whilst I've read the reason for refusal is clearly because of the lack of quality of living within the home. And that's good enough for me, and the officer recommendation is what I agree with and what hopefully the committee will agree with.
So that's that one. Thank you very much, speakers. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you very much. We move now to the last item 7.3, land to the west of Millbrook, Snelsmore Lane, Derby. Julia, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of a single dwelling on a parcel of land located on the northern side of Snelsmore Lane. The site measures approximately 0.11 hectares and is comprised of managed grassland. The plot lies at the western end of a linear row of residential properties which continue eastwards along Snelsmore Lane. The application seeks outline planning permission for the principle of development and the means of access only, with all other matters, appearance, layout, landscaping and scale reserved for a later date. An indicative site plan has been provided with the application, illustrating a building with an L-shaped footprint positioned in line with the adjacent dwelling at Millbrook. The submitted information suggests the development would be a 2-storey, 5-bedroom dwelling. A new vehicle access would be created into the site from Snelsmore Lane along the southern site boundary. The application is being considered by committee tonight because the site is located within the designated Bolton Moor Green Wedge. Within green wedges, local plan policy CP18 generally restricts new housing in order to protect the openness and undeveloped character of these areas. Whilst there is technically conflict with policy CP18, in this instance, it's considered that the proposed development represents a modest and well-contained infill, forming part of an established residential frontage along Snelsmore Lane. It does not project into the open countryside or the more visually sensitive areas of the green wedge. As such, it would not materially harm the openness, visual amenity or strategic function of the green wedge as a green buffer or area of separation. The development would make a small but positive contribution to the city's housing supply, delivering a new dwelling in a sustainable location. In terms of wider technical considerations, there are no significant trees on the development site and the tree officer raises no objections. Biodiversity impacts can be adequately addressed through planning conditions, including the delivery of mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain. No objections have been raised in highway safety terms, and although a letter of comment has been received, as summarised in section 4 of the report, no objections have been received from third parties. Whilst further consideration of the appearance, layout, scale and landscaping of the development would need to be undertaken at reserved matters stage, the submitted details suggest that the site has sufficient capacity to accommodate a dwelling without adversely impacting on neighbour amenity or the general character of the street scene. In applying the MPPF's tilted balance, where planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts significantly or demonstrably outweigh the benefits, it is considered the proposal offers clear benefits in terms of housing delivery and sustainable development. The conflict with policy CP18 is limited, localised and outweighed by the lack of harm to the wider green wedge function. And the scheme generally aligns with the wider objectives of the MPPF, including the efficient use of land and sustainable growth. In light of this, it is considered that the proposal represents a sustainable and acceptable form of development, and it is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions listed in the report. And you've got no speakers on this one, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had two applications this evening. relating to the green wedge, and I think both at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the harm that is going to be potentially caused. So in this case, as we always look at every application on its own merits, and in this case, I think there's relatively little harm caused to the green wedge. It's a small plot of land that will have minimal impact, in my view, on the green wedge in this location. So I go with the officer recommendation and support this, Chair.
Thanks, Martin. Any other comments? Councillor Prosser?
Just briefly, yeah, the green wedge on this to me has no relevance whatsoever, which is unusual for me because I'm very much against building on green wedges. There is a massive country park going in, sort of just in that area as part of the 1,000 development, 1,000 houses going in the Bellway just right next door. It would be stupid, in my opinion, to refuse something like this on this grounds because it's a very high-class house where that would be perfectly appropriate.
Thanks, Tim. Move to the vote. Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. All those in favour of the application? That's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, officers. Thank you, officers that have just sat there and been very nice and quiet. Turned up tonight. Thanks to the top table team as well. Thank you, everybody.
We've still got future majors.
Oh, we have, haven't we?
Sorry.
It's me. I'm moving ahead. I am. Yes. It's potential future site visits. I do apologise. Ian, over to you. Sorry.
Yeah. On to the interesting part of the show, Chair. Yes. Here we go. Number 1. 241 Osmaston Road. I think you can see that all. Was it conversion? I've not got my list.
Yes.
Yes. Conversion of that. You can see that from the street, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. Hospital is a variation of condition application, Chair, so. Bateman Street. I'm not sure what the proposal is, James. I haven't got my list. No,
for 2 commercial units.
2 commercial units, beg your pardon. Yeah.
Variation.
Another variation. Yes, this one was right on the edge of the urban-rural transition, but yes, it's just a variation of condition we've dealt with. Julia dealt with the scheme there. Which one's this?
Meadows, Downing Road.
Oh, okay.
Car showroom, storage and distribution.
Oh. Just in the commercial zone there, Chair. And then in the city centre, St James's Yard, various buildings and built development within the context of the refurbishment of that yard. Not see them? You're interested in that, Councillor Wilson? Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Another variation of condition, Chair, down on the commercial zone. Again, you can visit Molly Malone's on the corner there while you didn't take that site visit.
You in the chair?
And 48 Pastures Hill.
Extensions, alteration and change of use from 1 dwelling.
Oh yes,
Form 11
conversion
flats.
to 11 flats. A rather large conversion, but it's a rather large building on a nice plot.
New
No.
build on that. Okay.
No?
No.
No.
No takers.
No takers. Thank you, Chair. Must remember my list.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Switch it.
Oh, beg your pardon.
Once again, thank you, committee. Once again, thank you, committee. And once again, thank you, officers. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll say good night. Thank you. See you in September.